Hey, juniors, how you doing? It is Friday. That's right. It's Friday, September the 2nd. We made it through another week, and I hope that you are excited for the long weekend that we are having. We have 3 days coming up. Monday, of course, is Labor Day, so we'll be off that day. So I hope that you take some time this weekend to refresh, recharge, and renew, and that you're ready to go when we come back. I want to go ahead and talk about what we've got going on today. And to do that, I have to roll actually back to our past Tuesday plan, because this was originally what we wanted to do Tuesday, but we wanted to go ahead and we decided we better spend some more time practicing characterization before we got to our first learning check. So let's start off with our essential question. Can I effectively analyze a character based on a specific passage? And this is a little bit different than what we do, and then we'll take a look at that here in just a bit, okay? But that we're being very intentional and specific based on a chunk put in front of us. And that brings on some different maybe challenges for us. So we'll be working on the daily learning check that was originally scheduled for 8:30, but it will now be on the 2nd, and it is already renamed that way, based on a passage from A Beast in the Cave. And then, of course, our 80s movie quote of the day, and I'll go back down to Friday to our actual one. You're not dying, you just can't think of anything good to do. Which is from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And we already actually watched that video clip. That was when Ferris is talking to his best friend Cameron and trying to get Cameron to come over to give him a ride to go play hooky around town. So there you go. Let's take a look at our actual assignment. And I'm pulling it up right here. So we are going to be looking at a passage from The Beast in the Cave by H.P. Lovecraft. He's an American horror writer, and he wrote this in 1904. He was just 14 when he wrote this. Awesome, right? And he sent this off to what would now be called a fanzine, okay? And it was published, and this is kind of one of the start of his career. It is about a cave explorer who decides to separate from his tour group and then immediately gets lost. And he has this kind of going through all the mental things, wondering about how he will live, how he will survive, how he will die. And then he ends up actually being able to defeat or beat down, if you will, stop a beast that he hears coming at him. And then he's found by the tour guide, and the tour guide and him go back to see the beast that he just beat with the rock, and discover that it was actually a man, that it was another person who had got lost in the cave and had metamorphosed into something different. So anyway, he immediately becomes lost in the cave, an expansive and complex mammoth cave, and that is actually the Mammoth Cave system in central eastern Kentucky. And using this excerpt, what can we learn about the lost hiker? So we're looking for the character trait. And here is the passage right here. This actually comes pretty early on in the story. This is like the fourth or so paragraph. And what happens at this point is he realizes he's lost. He's starting to worry about how he's going to find his way back. He's realizing just now he's lost. And at the beginning of this passage, his torch is going out, which is going to plunge him into pitch darkness. Okay. And then we're going to use the Spiel model to create our constructed response. Now, I want to go back for a second to the instructions for the assignment, okay? I want to go back to the instructions for the assignment because it does have in here a little bit about the Spiel method of characterization, okay? And so I don't want you to be confused, but I do want to point out that there are some ways to help us discover the true nature of a character. That's speech, that's the way they think or what they're thinking about, the effect that they have on others, the actions that they take, and what they look like. And we get some of these in this passage, okay? We get some of these ideas in this passage. But I don't want you to get confused because these things help you discover the character trait that you're going to write about, but we're going to use the Spiel model to actually create the constructor response, okay? So I know that both of those are on there, and I don't want you to get confused. This Steal, S-T-E-A-L, helps you find the characterization, but Spiel is the way that we're going to write this, okay? All right, now, a couple things about this assignment today that are a little bit different. The ones that we've been doing up to this point is you read a passage, right? It could be a short few sentences like what we did on Thursday. It could be a longer passage that we read earlier in the week. But no matter what it was, we gave you a thing and then asked you, like, what do you see in all of this, right? This is a very particular passage. Now, again, you probably, hopefully, are familiar with the story. You remember some of the stuff from the story from before, okay? But that this is very limited. Now, there are some different character traits that you might find in this, right? That depending on how you interpret this and what part of this you look at, you'll find some different characteristics. But what this really means then is that we need to see a characteristic that we specifically see right here. So instead of you looking all over the place and finding something, you're being directed to one particular place. Now, that probably means that we would be looking for some very specific ones or within a very narrow range, right, of possibilities. Okay, so there's the passage. You're going to read that. You can mark it up, do whatever you want to with it. And then let's look at what we have here. These are the spiel, the summary, the point, which is the answer, the example that you're going to use from the text, the analysis. How does that example prove your point or your answer, and then the link, and that's how we connect it to something else. Okay. If we look at the question itself, this one's pretty straightforward. What can we learn about the lost hiker? Okay. So what we're looking at then is what is something very specific about the character that we saw in that passage, right? Okay. So when you start here with the summary, what is it that we're going to be looking at? So when you look at this little excerpt and you summarize this in one or two sentences, what are some of the key elements that you have to have? Obviously, hiker, obviously lost. Okay, but what else? So you want to look in here to help you kind of get that background. This summary piece gives you the context. So we know that you understand the story from which this answer came from. Okay, so that's the starting point. The P, this is the answer, right? This is the point you're trying to make. This is the thing you're presenting to the reader. This is the answer to that question, right? Now, as you do your pre-writing, if you would like to write multiple answers, I'm not opposed to that, right? If you could write 2 or 3 different character traits that you see, that's probably not a bad thing. When you do that, that gives you some options, okay? That's like, okay, I see these traits. Which one is going to be the easiest one to work with, right? If you only do one, you're kind of locking yourself into that one, right? And it may or may not be the easiest choice. So think about that. E, that is the specific clues that you see. So when you go back here, where did you see that, right? Where did you see that? For instance, after he is discovered by the tour guide, right? After the tour guide finds him, he's petrified. He's totally scared, right? Like before, he runs into the tour guide, he is horribly scared. He's petrified. He thinks that he's going to die in this cave. But then he finds his tour guide. And before he was horribly scared of the monster and what the monster is going to do and what could be the monster. But now that he's got the tour guide and the tour guide has light, so he's with somebody and they got light, he wants to go back and see the beast. Let's go back and see it. Let's go see what happened. Let's go see what this was, right? Notice that he changes. So you would look for places that show his bravery, right? Or his change of heart, or that he is now more comfortable with these other things. So you go and look for those specific examples, okay? It would not be a bad idea to highlight those in here so you remember what they are. Also, too, it's probably not a bad idea to copy them and paste them. Take it straight from here and paste it into this example box, because the more specific with your examples you can be, the better. If you say, oh, he is brave when he's with other people because when he's around somebody else, he acts differently. Well, yeah, he did act differently, but that's not very specific. We don't know the context. We don't know how or why he changed his mind or what it was that, like, what do you mean he was with somebody else? Who, right? And so you want to be really specific. Quotes are best. Very close paraphrases are just about as good. Now, the hardest part is this analysis, and we've talked about this a lot this week. How does your example prove your answer? If you say that he was this character trait, and I see it in this example, how does that prove? Okay. And I know that this is the hardest part of the answer. This is literally the hardest part of the answer, but this is the part that really separates the people that get this and the people that are still working on it. Okay. Because if you can make that connection, you can say, oh, look right here. Remember the example that we used before about the person who put a ton of ketchup on somebody's burger because they had a special order, right? That shows that they're mean. How does that show they're mean? Well, because it took more work to put all that ketchup on it than if it would just like squirt and pass it on, right? It took work. It took effort. They had to do more to prove their point. And their point was kind of lost, right? Like that person didn't realize he was being mean. He just thought he was like, you know, why he was being mean. He just like, oh yeah, he's stupid, he's dumb, he doesn't like his job or something, right? Or he's just messing with me. So you don't really get that. You want to be able to explain how this example gets you back to your answer. That is the hardest part. The link can be difficult if you don't think about what the role of this is. The idea of the link is to take your answer and your explanation and to put it into a different context, and that way the reader sees it better and easier. Link it to something that they already know, or something that they're familiar with, or another character, or another part of the story, right? So you see the context, you see the connection, you see like I'm applying this thought to another situation. This one, it can be difficult. Okay, it can be difficult. Um, it's not as hard as the analysis piece. Okay, and the analysis piece really is the key to this whole answer, right? This is important because this really shows that you understand the answer. Okay, and then you put your answer down here in this part right here. Now, the pre-writing, it's important and it helps you out, and we really believe that that will get you going on the right path. But that's not the part that gets graded. The part that gets graded is this answer right down here. So until you put your answer down here, you won't get a grade, right? So please think about that. Okay, please think about that, because we have had people like do the pre-writing and don't do the last part, and then they wonder why they didn't get a grade, right? So please make sure you put your answer down there. All right, as you are working on this, you have questions, feel free to reach out to Miss McGuire. We will be doing this in class on Friday, September the 2nd. If you are not with us, you are welcome to do this and get that submitted. That way you do not get behind. This is a learning check, okay? And don't forget that learning checks, and you guys are familiar with this from before, learning checks go in that 50% category, right? So practices are 10% of your grade. Learning checks are half of your grade. And then assessments are the last 40%. We will take these learning checks, we'll divide them between written and multiple choice, right? So these do count. I also want you to realize that there's not a whole lot of grades for you yet. And so if you go on there, if you do like let's say you've done 3 practice assignments and you nailed it, 9, 9, 9, 10, but then you do the learning check and you blow it off and you get a 6, that's going to drag you way backwards because the learning check counts for more, right? It's a bigger percentage. So please remember, the learning checks matter, and you want to do your best work on that, right? It will overload the rest of your grade. But anyway, that is what we will be doing on September the 2nd. If you're not with us, you do need to try to get that accomplished for us. And if you have any questions, make sure you're reaching out to Miss McGuire. And good luck, everybody.